Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story. As a landlord, I had always heard horror stories about difficult tenants, but I never thought I would have to go through one myself. I inherited a property in a small town in Arizona and decided to rent it out to supplement my income. It was a nice house with 3 bedrooms, a backyard, and a small garden. After putting up an ad, I soon found a tenant named Karen. At first, Karen seemed like a normal person, but things started to go south when she fell behind on rent. I tried to be understanding at first, but after several missed payments, I knew I had to take action. I gave her a warning and informed her that I would be evicting her soon. That's when the real trouble began. Karen started threatening me and telling me that she would have me arrested. She even claimed that she owned the property and that I was a fraud. I knew she was just trying to scare me, but I never expected what happened next. On the day of the eviction, I arrived at the property to find the police already there. Karen was claiming that I had broken into her house and that I was trying to evict her illegally. She had even gone as far as to break the windows herself to make it look like I had caused the damage. I tried to explain to the police that I was the owner of the property, but they refused to listen to me. I was arrested and spent the night in jail. The next day, I was able to call my lawyer and he was able to get me released on bail. It was a terrifying experience and I felt completely helpless. I knew I had to prove my innocence, but I had no idea how to do it. Thankfully, I had a friend who was a private investigator. I asked him to look into Karen's background and he found out that she had a history of filing false police reports and scamming landlords. He was even able to find a witness who had seen Karen breaking the windows of the property herself. Armed with this information, I was able to prove my innocence in court, and Karen was charged with fraud and vandalism. The ordeal left me traumatized, and I made sure to be more careful with my tenants from then on. I did thorough background checks and made sure to get everything in writing. I even installed security cameras at the property to protect myself. Despite everything that had happened, I still believed in the goodness of people and decided to rent out the property again. This time, I found a tenant who was responsible and paid the rent on time. I was finally able to relax and enjoy the benefits of being a landlord. However, my peaceful life was once again disrupted when I received a call from my tenant, saying that there was a fire in the property. I rushed over to find that the house had been completely destroyed. The cause of the fire was unknown, but I suspected foul play. I was devastated. Not only had I lost my property, but I also felt violated. I didn't know who could have done something like this, but I was determined to find out. I hired a team of investigators to look into the matter, and after several weeks of searching, they were able to find out that the fire was started by Karen. Apparently, she had broken into the property and set it on fire in revenge for being evicted. She had even left a note saying that she would not be held accountable for her actions. I was shocked and disgusted by her actions. Karen was arrested again, and this time she was given a harsher sentence for her crimes. I was able to receive some compensation from my insurance, but it was nothing compared to the pain and trauma I had gone through. From that day on, I decided to sell the property and move on from being a landlord altogether. It was just too much stress and anxiety for me to handle. I decided to invest my money in something else, and I put the property up for sale. It took a while to find a buyer, but eventually someone came forward and made an offer. The price was lower than I had hoped for, but I was just happy to be rid of the property and move on from the whole ordeal. The next one is a pro-revenge story. I know this story because I am good friends with my neighbor. My neighbor, let's call him John, decided 8 years ago that he wanted to build a second story on his house. However, his property had a legal binding that prevented it from being renovated unless all surrounding neighbors agreed. This is called a covenant, and it can't be contested in the local council. This one was over 100 years old. All his neighbors, except one, let's call him Alex, agreed to let him renovate. Now, John is a big guy, ex-military and muscular. He has a wife and 2 children, but he is not quick to anger. About twice every year, John would write Alex polite letters asking him to lift the ban from renovating his house. And every year, Alex declined, complaining that it would be an eyesore. Literally every other house on our road has 2 stories but his, or that it would ruin the aesthetic of the street. Seriously? Alex was also a complete jerk and a hypocrite, playing loud music past midnight. Anyway, for 8 years, John would get turned down by Alex, and then suddenly Alex decided he was going to sell his house. The revenge was on. After he heard the news, John bought one of those professional metal signs that people put in front of their houses when selling, and put one in front of his own house. On it read something like, 5 new apartments being built. Get in quick. 2 sold already. 3 entire stories. Loud noise expected for a year. The number given on the sign was disconnected. This was repeated in Mandarin and Arabic as well. The sign was put right next to Alex's house on the edge of John's property. The auction for the house was going in a month, and Alex was quick to get a lawyer against John to make him put the sign down. I think it was because the sign was encroaching on his land. John wrote about 60 letters to the lawyer, and it cost about $50 for the lawyer to read each letter and give his legal advice to Alex. The lawyer contacted John and told him that if he did not take down the sign a week before the auction, they would take him to court. A week before the auction, John took the sign down, but he wasn't done. The day of the auction arrived, and John parked his 4 cars along the front of Alex's house so no one could see the "Auction Here" sign, and the auction goers couldn't park there. John has an inbuilt speaker system in his house and was blasting building sound effects and music throughout his house. He put back up the sign he put down and put another one up which read, "House Demolition Furniture Sale." John bought most of the furniture from his garage and the house outside on his lawn. If people came to buy something, he would overprice it outrageously because he didn't really want to sell his stuff. It was just to make the apartment construction more believable and give the auction goers a taste of how loud it will be. When the auction took place, we could barely hear the auctioneer, and when Alex complained to John about the noise, John said that he had the builders on a contract and didn't want to reschedule. The house was estimated to go for $3 million, but ended up going for $2.4 instead. Alex had to halt his construction of his new house because he didn't have the funds. Alex, who according to John sounded like he was seething with anger, phoned to tell John that he owes him $600,000. The new owners of the property lifted the covenant when John told them about his plan. "You guys should be thanking me. I saved you $600,000, John replied. The next one is a petty revenge story. I live in a rural and remote area that's mostly acreages. I get along with my neighbors, except for one man who lives across the road and about 100 meters down. He has 2 dogs that keep coming onto my property and chasing my chickens. They've killed a few, including my duck and rabbit when she escaped from her enclosure. I've asked the neighbor nicely to keep his dogs at home, but he just says that it's my problem because I free-range my chickens on my property. This man even went to another neighbor and criticized her for feeding her cat on her deck outside her back door because his dogs keep going over and eating the cat food and getting fat. I've called the police to find out what I can do, but since there are no dog bylaws, there isn't much I can do. A friend of mine moved her family down to the city to attend grad school and asked me if I would take her 2 Maremas, which are big livestock guardian dogs. They will protect my chickens from my neighbor's dogs. He messaged me tonight with a link with instructions on how to stop your dogs from barking. I lost it laughing. My dogs are constantly barking at his dogs at the perimeter of my property, which does not border his at all. His dogs are trying to come down my driveway and are running up and down the road all the time. I texted him back that my dogs are simply barking at his dogs when they try to come onto my property, and if he wants my dogs to stop barking, he needs to keep his dogs at home. There was no response from him, but within 5 minutes all the barking stopped because he called his dogs home. Now, every time I hear my dogs bark, instead of getting annoyed, I smile, knowing that my neighbor, whose dogs have been killing my animals, is annoyed, and that if he wants the barking to stop, he actually has to train his own dogs. The next one is an entitled people story. This happened when I was 12 years old, and I figured I'd share my experience with an entitled family who tried to steal my red-bone coonhound. I grew up on the family farm in the middle of nowhere. We own approximately 350 acres and have a ridiculously long driveway, and you can't see the house from the main road. So often people see our dogs and think they are lost and pick them up. We have collars with our contact info that are on them always because of this fact. My parents are big on not hunting or removing wild animals unless they are a danger to us. They always had the mindset that we are living in their home. They were here first. Just respect and be aware of your surroundings. For For the most part, the wildlife leaves us and our livestock alone, other than Jacob, the black bear breaking into the grain shed and elk eating hay bales. We had a fairly large cougar who learned that our llamas made easy meals. The cougar ate all 9 of them in less than a year. The last straw was when I was walking in the horse pasture and interrupted the big cat's lunch. Last llama. Luckily, the family Pyrenees put himself between the cougar and me. I have no doubt if it wasn't for him, I would not be here today. My dad decided he had to do something. He truly didn't want to use lethal methods and started researching other options. He came across a breeder who breeds coonhounds and reached out. The breeder was extremely helpful and told my dad that most cougars have had some kind of run-in with hunting dogs, so they won't be as bold. So we bought a red-bone coonhound, after doing lots of research on the breed and making sure we could handle one. Gus Timber Chopper was flown from Virginia to Canada and quickly became a valued family member. As anyone knows with any hound, the nose goes down and the ears turn off. Gus became a favorite of all our neighbors as his wandering helps with predators and livestock. Life was peaceful other than a few trips to the shelter to pick up Gus. The peace would not last though. Enter entitled family. They saw our 5 dogs chilling on our property and decided they were abandoned or lost. Not the case. My brother and I were playing in the creek, and the dogs had wandered away not too far, but far enough that the family didn't see us. The entitled family then pulled off the road and got out of the vehicle and started trying to coax the dogs into their van. 3 of our dogs ran back to the creek where we were playing. Our Pyrenees, Togo, and Gus stayed. The entitled dad somehow caught Gus and started dragging him to their van. Gus started to freak out. He started to bark, alerting me that something wasn't right. So I went to see what was happening. Well, 12-year-old me saw some random guy trying to put Gus in his van, and the entitled kids and mom were gushing over how cute he was, and how he would be the perfect dog for them. I wasn't too nervous as this happens often. People see the dogs, no house, and think they are lost, or someone dumped them and try to help the owners by taking them to a shelter or vet, then often call or stop by to apologize or causing any inconvenience. I yelled out, "Hey, that dog isn't lost, he's with us!" The entitled kids started to scream that they wanted the dog and they deserved the dog. Then they burst into uncontrollable sobs. The entitled mom asked me to come closer so we don't have to yell. I politely declined and said again that Gus was ours and asked the dad to please stop. Entitled dad grunted and tried to pick up Gus. Gus ended up biting the guy on his hand. He didn't break the skin, more of a warning nip. The entitled dad let go and Gus came running back to me. Entitled dad looked furious and started to walk towards me and Gus, yelling that I shouldn't own dogs because clearly we don't train or properly care for them, and how much better of a home they could offer him. I was starting to panic because this guy looked so mad, raging about how he'll teach that red bastard proper manners. I'm backing away while holding on to Gus's collar. Togo quickly stood in front of me. I was begging the entitled dad to back off and to leave. Entitled dad said something along the lines of, "I'm taking this dog to teach you a lesson. If you don't look after your pets, they will find a better home." I told him to stop as Togo is very, very protective of me and my brother, and while he has lots of training as he started showing signs of being too aggressive with people, and we didn't want him to bite someone unprovoked. Entitled dad did stop for a moment, but the entitled mom and kids were screaming that they wanted this dog. It had to be this dog. Togo gave entitled dad lots of warnings, low growls, bared teeth, lunging and snapping. Entitled dad tried to grab Gus by the collar and ended up knocking me down. Togo latched onto the entitled dad's arm and started to shake his head and yanking the guy off his feet. One of the other dogs, she belonged to my uncle, came after I screamed and grabbed entitled dad by his pant leg, ripping them. My brother also joined because he heard me scream. I got him to take Gus and told him to run home and get dad. Togo wouldn't listen when I tried to get him to let go. Entitled kids and mom tried to get out to help. Thankfully, they listened when I screamed, "Stop." Entitled dad was yelling to call the dog off, and how he would see to it that all of our dogs would be put down, and that we would never be allowed to own another again. At this point, I was scared, angry, and overwhelmed. I started to cry. I thought that Togo would be put down for sure, and that if entitled dad took us to court, he'd somehow get Gus. Togo let her entitled dad's arm go, but made it clear that entitled dad was to stay on the ground. Anytime he tried to stand, Togo would knock him down and growl in his face. My dad came racing down the driveway, ready for war. Entitled family started saying how Togo attacked unprovoked and that I misunderstood what they were doing. My dad told the family that the police and an ambulance would be arriving and that they'd best stay put, and if they decided to drive away, that he has pictures of the dad and vehicle, and he will press every kind of charges he legally can. My dad called some neighbors to come to help if things go sideways. The police and ambulance arrive. Entitled dad will need stitches in his arm. They told the police that they thought the dogs weren't mine and I was lying and the kids want a dog so bad, but they didn't want to pay for one. They saw ours and thought they were strays. None of our dogs looked like strays, well-fed, brushed, and spoiled. Entitled dad then said when I told him to stop or he could get hurt, he took it as I was threatening him, and that's why he didn't listen. He and his wife were demanding that Togo be put down immediately, and that we are animal hoarders who need to be charged and banned from owning any kind of animal. The police and paramedics told him he was very lucky. Togo is a guardian dog. They are bred for being protectors. Togo was only trying to protect me. Entitled dad didn't care. He took us to court. Entitled dad got 34 stitches in his arm. In the courthouse, entitled mom came to my parents and said she had an offer. If they accepted, they'd drop the lawsuit. They wanted us to give them Gus. Dad told her to pound sand in a less polite speech. In the end, thanks to the game cameras Dad had in various places, we had footage. The judge was less than amused, as entitled family made it sound like I ordered my dog to attack them when they just wanted to play with the dog. The judge pointed out that a 12-year-old girl versus a 40-something grown man was not a fair fight, and that my dogs just evened the odds. We did have to isolate Togo and made sure that our dogs had microchips and their tattoos were legible. Dad also decided that he'd fence off my brother in my favorite places so that the dogs can't wander. I do wonder sometimes about entitled family, and I have 2 questions I'd love to ask. After all the expenses, wouldn't it have been cheaper to just buy or adopt a dog rather than steal one? The next one is an entitled parent story. I'm an English teacher. I love the job. I mostly love my students and their parents. I feel blessed that most parents are good people. They are worried about their children's progress and can be angry, but can always be reasoned with. I get positive feedback on my teaching and managing my classes and the students. Parents are generally happy with me. Unfortunately, I still have to deal with entitled parents from time to time, the Karens of parenthood. This year, I have 4 classes of last year's students. They will take their exams, and with a bit of luck, I can shake their hands at graduation and wish them the best in their future education and life when they get their diploma. To get to that point, they still need to take exams for their subjects, mine included. They can work in digital books or in their regular paper-bound ones. I don't really care what works best for them. I also don't mind tutoring, but I have my conditions. You do your homework, you pay attention. If, when you think you understand, you can start on the homework. You do not interrupt me when I'm talking explaining. You ask questions. Basically, the basics of what a student should do. This class knows exactly what the days and times are of their test, including the material. I made those dates known 2 months in advance as I know that some really could use that time. I have uploaded everything in Google Classroom concerning the materials of the last 3 tests, along with links and materials for extra practice. Enter entitled student, ES. ES doesn't work on my subject in class. I've corrected him numerous times, sent numerous emails to his parents and team lead about his behavior, and have had many meetings with all parties involved. Promises are made by him and his parents about bettering himself. He knows and understands that what he does isn't good for him and doesn't help create a healthy learning environment. For added info, he doesn't have any learning difficulties, mental health issues, or anything. This behavior was known in primary school and the years before. School isn't a priority, his own words. I have offered tutoring on the previously named conditions and told him that with his current behavior, he can't get my tutoring. He's free to ask other teachers, but at the risk they will ask me about him, refer him back to me, and/or refuse him. Both him and his parents understand that and have said so. They agreed with what was said. To the story, exams are coming up. He has not done a thing. Every piece of advice has been given and a lot has been practiced. They are drilled on all the strategies, tricks, and everything they might encounter. Then, the week before the holidays, there are no classes. Students can make appointments with teachers, or teachers can invite students for extra help, etc. I have sent 2 different emails to 2 different groups per class. Both students and parents got this email. One saying that the said student is more than welcome to come at XYZ time if needed, but I need to know if a student comes and what they want to know so I can provide material. I sent a couple of links with extra material to practice for good measure. I sent another email to another group per class. I basically told the parents and students that although I'm disappointed that they didn't do the work in and for class for the exams, I'm willing to tutor them at YYS time in this week. Same amount of time as the students who did put in the effort, along with material and links. Why did I do this? Quite simple. I want my students to pass. Some were lazy because they had good grades and understanding of the material. However, some don't and are just lazy. I don't want them to fail and then retake the year. Also, it puts me in the parents' and school's good books, in case things go to heck. The same information is also posted in their Google Classroom space. I get several responses thanking me for my time and effort, especially for those who didn't do a thing in class. 3 students took me up on the offer. They came, we discussed some things, and they practiced some more. So, the week for tutoring ends, time slots are over, and then it happens. I got an email from entitled parent, EP, mother to ES, last Friday evening. She wanted to know if there was another possibility for her son to have some tutoring. Since I needed to reply to a different email, I also responded to EP and told her no. The holidays start on Monday, this Monday. Last for 2 weeks. Mondays are my day off. Tuesday I am not at school due to private matters. Husband has surgery, I'm taking him. And Wednesday is the test for my subject. He's had the entire week to come to the different times stipulated in Google Classroom and the email. For good measure, I asked if a colleague wanted to help in our teacher group chat. 3 said that they wouldn't mind. I suggested to EP to email these colleagues of mine and see if one of them has time on Monday, Tuesday before the exam on Wednesday. On Saturday, EP sent an email to me demanding that I tutor her son, ES. Her reasoning? He needs it, so I should just do it. He's my student and it's my job, no one else. I've got holidays now, so I should have plenty of time to help her son out. I don't respond. It's my holiday, and after 2 near burnouts, I've learned my lesson about not working in the holidays. It's Wednesday now, and this woman has sent no less than 22 emails. I just had contact with a colleague who is like the team lead of my department of students. He is pissed and will deal with it. I'm so glad that this parent doesn't have my number. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.